Michael, the White House is responding. They're describing the interview as strong. Would you describe it as strong, my friend?
No, look, the White House has been out of touch throughout this entire process. I think over the last week, they've done more damage to his campaign than the actual president has done. As I've said before, I voted for President Biden. If he's at the top of the ticket, I'll vote for him again. But this isn't the candidate we saw in 2020. This isn't the candidate who showed empathy. When he talks about, I'll give it my best try. Look, there's millions of Americans who are going to suffer, whether it be bans on reproductive health, whether it be rolling back the Civil Rights Act, whether it be Project 2025. Like, I come at this not just as a Democrat, but a Black American. And if Trump is elected, my life every day will be worse. So when he says, I'll give it my try or my best try, like, that's not enough.
Let me stick with you for a second, Michael. What was your biggest takeaway from the interview last night?
That he doesn't want to get out, that he's not listening to anyone around him, and that he's really recalcitrant about this. I think he's upset that people are trying to push him out. I think he feels like he's not being properly respected. But a lot of that has to do with the bubble that he's in. It's not about him. This mentality that only he can beat Trump. That's what Democrats have been fighting against from Republicans. What we need is a president right now who can say, I may not be the best choice, and look at this from an introspective kind of view and look at what the effects of a loss will be. The effects of a Democratic loss will be catastrophic, and it just doesn't seem that he grasps that.
Lindsay, do you think the interview yesterday did anything to quell the concerns of voters and Democrats when it comes to our current president?
No, I don't think so, because people are looking at this and saying, are you prepared to do this job? I think it's easy. You can liken what the president does to break it down to layman's terms like a CEO. So when you look at Steve Jobs, he actually doesn't know how to code, right? But he led an entire tech company because he had the communication needed to lead people into success. Biden has an entire team of strategists that can lead us into foreign policy, that can handle the budget. He needs to be able to communicate effectively to lead us into success. And he's not convinced the American public, even his own party, even the people in the middle that are undecided and really cannot vote for a convicted felon for a president. He hasn't convinced them that they should stick by him. And that's problematic because that's the one job that you have.
Let's talk about the cognitive testing issue. It's not going away, Michael. You're a Democratic strategist. Do you think Biden should just get the testing done, put the issue to rest, maybe just assure some voters that are still concerned? Just take the cognitive test. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, he should take the test, but it's not going to dispel anything. Every day we're going to talk about his health, which is really the problem here, because every day that we're focusing on his health and not focusing on Project 2025 or national abortion bans is a day that we're not talking about what a catastrophe the Trump presidency will be. So we've hit this tipping point where Joe Biden's health is going to be the thing that we're talking about for the next 4 months if he's the nominee for the party.
So should he step down, Michael? And for voters, does it really come to, no matter who, I'm going to vote blue?
I've been really apprehensive to call for him to step down, but I think we're at a point now where he's got to say he's not running for re-election. If he continues to run, it's going to further divide the party. And the only thing that matters is winning. So look, if he's at the top of the ticket, I'm going to vote for him because Donald Trump is that much of a threat. But I think we're now at a point where he really needs to sit down and talk to the rest of the party, because this isn't about politicians in Washington wanting him to not run. This is about Americans all over the country who are terrified about what will happen if he loses.
Lindsay, let's go back to former President Trump. He seems to be showing restraint. He really hasn't spoken much this whole week. He had a few posts on Truth Social. What do you think his strategy is? Because I've never seen him stay this quiet on an issue like this.
Yeah, this is a big deal. I think that he's trying to show restraint and be disciplined on purpose because he's trying to run a much cleaner campaign than we saw him run 4 years ago intentionally. I think why jump in an argument when there's already implosion happening within the Democratic Party? And he needs to figure out, he knows that it was neck and neck between him and Biden. The polls weren't showing him with some big landslide. Right. And so now he has to figure out whether Kamala or whoever else they pick comes up as somebody who's actually competitive towards him, and that's why the attacks have started by other Republican colleagues of his. But he's staying quiet because he knows this can go in his favor if he just says nothing, because we know that Trump puts his foot in his mouth often, so he says too much, he could absolutely ruin this whole thing for himself and his party.
Well, guys, thank you so much. Don't go too far. We're going to come back to you. Lindsey Granger, Michael Starr Hopkins, thank you.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. Also, don't forget to click that red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.